days as an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely because you're navigating through a lot of challenges. Yet you continue to keep that brave face. You continue to keep that smile on because you want to continue creating that hope, that motivation, that confidence to all stakeholders. You can't let them down. It is very crucial on how do you manage yourself. Do you just put things under the carpet or do you face them and figure out what is it that you're going through at that point in time and address it? We always end up piling on things and we don't address them when they should be addressed, which we should always, because piling them on only builds up and manifests into many other things, which end up leading to a lot of sucky moments in life.
Can you tell us like your evolution as an entrepreneur, as a boss queen? So I guess I want to start there because I'm just so fascinated by the wit of how you are able to tell stories even on your show. And this is what you're known as now.
Yeah. And interestingly, Neeta, it also takes me back to the time when I did my first entrepreneurial venture back in 2016, because I didn't really realize that I was inclined. I mean, that also had its base as stories. It was much later that, you connect the dots always backwards, right? And for me, I think Wine Studio happened in 2019, where we built this creative content business. But much before that, even if I recall my childhood, I remember being so much in love with stories. English was my favorite subject. Literature was something that I used to love attending classes of. And I recall reading books that were much beyond my age group. Like my peers, my friends would read a certain kind of genre. Yeah. And I would be way ahead of the kind of genres that I would be reading at that age. But I never knew that was because stories was a world that I lived in.
Right.
And when 2016 happened and I built this venture, which was about creating an impact for artisans in India and making the artisanal story and artisanal crafts aspirational in India, I realized that there's a reason that when people buy a Louis Vuitton bag, a handcrafted Louis Vuitton bag, or any luxury brand which is like handcrafted, the reason they do so without blinking an eye is because of the aspirational story that's sold behind it. But when I looked at the artisans and handicraft business folks in India, I saw the craftsmen struggling to make ends meet, despite the arts being beautiful, stunning, and taking ages. For maybe one Paithani sari might take 65, 70 days to get completed on the handloom. And despite that kind of the work that went into it, I still saw when people went into different crafts market, flea markets, crafts bazaar, people were still bargaining for the pennies. Yeah. And that made me question, why is it that we don't blink an eye when it comes to buying a luxury handcrafted product, but we bargain for the pennies when it comes to the Indian handicrafts?
So true.
And that's where I saw that the story was not being sold and told right. It was always sympathetic. It was never aspirational.
Right.
And that business for some reason didn't do well. The timing wasn't right. Co-founder conflict, didn't have the right mentors, XYZ, whatever happened. And I had to shut shop, figured out the next thing in life.
When did you realize that that this was, a pivot or a failure? And when did you realize that it's time to let go? Because I think a lot of times when we are pursuing something and we're putting our heart and soul into it and we believe in it, like you believe in the artisans and you're like, I want to be able to like tell their stories and I want to be able to disrupt this industry and do something, do something different, and you're passionate about it. It's giving you this purpose. Because I think that for a lot of our listeners, at the brave table, they want to do something brave. They want to do something bold.
Yeah.
You know, it is the new year. And there's this also like, what if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
And so when was it like a timeline for you? Was it a specific instance? Did you know in your gut? Take us through that process.
So there was no timeline to it. And I don't function with a timeline. But I did see things weren't working the way I would want them to. Yet I was happy to be patient and continue persisting. But I had my environment, including my parents, including people around me, question what am I doing with my life? And I just let go of a cushy job and was young and had a lot of potential. So nobody believed in me. I believed in me. I believed in the idea. Yet somewhere, because I think somewhere I let all of that seep in. And I felt helpless. I felt unheard. I felt that I didn't know what to do next. And I gave up. You know, when I look back, I still tell myself, I wish I'd continued that. Because I know now that I see ventures in the similar space, I see they're thriving. And I see that maybe I could have made it different, but maybe it was not meant to be. Maybe it was for me to learn from and see that I take that learning through in a different way.
Well, and so doing what you do now, do you think you still have moments of, I wish I was doing that?
Now, I still feel that I can still go back to it. You know, now actually I feel that I'm better equipped with the learnings that I have accumulated over these few years since then to now. I feel that maybe it didn't happen at that point in time, because you always look in retrospect and you see that there's a reason. And I very firmly believe there's a reason to everything. It did not work out. And now that I know it did not work out for these many reasons, I know I can always put that learning back and still contribute. And that is what I'm trying to do at Vine right now, and ensure that the stories are told right and in a way that it really connects with the audience. Maybe I wasn't equipped back then and it did not work because I also did not have the confidence to steer the ship back then. So that learning is something that I am very and immensely grateful for.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's stories like yourself where you are working on this one thing, but the bravery and the courage to then redirect failure is what I'm picking up. And redirecting failure to this new venture where you are talking about storytelling. So in the social media world, and I think that there's a lot of big brands and even smaller brands. Consumer product goods are becoming a huge thing in India now, just because everyone there's Paytm, which is like our PayPal, similar, and then you have, it's just a much easier way for paying for products, and you're doing it direct to consumer. Now, anybody who has ever dreamed of having like a Shopify business or selling candles or selling journals, and I know many people listening are like, I have this idea of doing X. What is like that first thing that they can do to tell their story of their product or of the thing that they want to pursue and create?
Beautiful question, especially at this point in time in India. There's so many D2C brands that are thriving, the direct-to-consumer brands that are like thriving in every category you think about it, and it's there. One thing that every brand needs to really figure out, first things first, is who is their audience. A lot of times we feel that it is for everybody, but it is not. And if you started it not because you just wanted to start a D2C brand. You started it because you saw that it kind of maybe was a problem for you. Talk about journals, right? I felt, you know, maybe if I was a D2C brand owner and creating journals, I would think about it in a way that, okay, why do I want to create journals? I want to create journals because certain kind of journals that exist are not really helping people really reflect deeply. I really want my journal to help people go deeper. And if that is the problem, then the story has to be told in that way. Who are these people who want to really, my consumer, what does this consumer look like? What does this consumer think about? What is it that they want to journal about? Do they want to, there's so many gratitude journals, but can I go deeper? Is my ideal consumer persona struggling to really reflect on their failures? Are they struggling to think about maybe just acknowledging themselves? Or for that matter, are they really wanting to heal the inner child within?
Yeah.
And if all of that is the case, then I need to start talking about these stories, because these are the challenges that my ideal consumer persona is facing. I don't need to just continue pushing the button and pushing the pedal on performance marketing and spending on ads without telling the story right, without identifying what is it that they're struggling with. So if I can figure out that and build the narrative around what they think about, what the consumer is really struggling with, what is it that they want to accomplish, what would their journey from where they are right now to where they want to be, how would what you are creating help them reach there? Talk about that journey. I think that is what we need to fill as a gap when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, and you don't really see that. I see many accounts that are like, sale or, and there's no heart with it.
Yeah.
And people think just because they can put ads to it or, that it would move the needle. But people are looking to really connect with you. And which is why, personal branding has become so big, because they want to see your journey. They want to see your struggles. They want to see your failures, and they want to have what you're having. If you just told me about this coffee shop and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I want to go to this coffee shop now.
I know, right?
Even though being in Mumbai, it might take like an hour to get, down the road. But because you're like, this was so amazing, and it was, and just some of the things that you experienced there. And I think that we take it for granted. And I wanted to kind of double click on something that you shared. As a multifaceted entrepreneur as you are, have you had any tools, or maybe if you can go deeper into some of the tools that have kept you mentally and emotionally sane, and maybe even motivated to keep going, especially after going through challenges, setbacks, like the roller coaster ride of being an entrepreneur? And I'm just curious as to what those things are that, for our listeners, they can take hold of that even after listening to this today.
Quite a few. There are days as an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely because you're navigating through a lot of challenges, a lot of ups and downs through and through the journey. Yet you continue to keep that brave face. You continue to keep that smile on, because you want to continue creating that hope, that motivation, that confidence to all stakeholders, including your teams, including your investors, including your clients. You can't let them down. Just because you're having a sucky day. And it is in those moments I feel that it is very crucial on how do you manage yourself. Do you just put things under the carpet? Or do you face them and figure out what is it that you're going through at that point in time and address it? And I realized this back in 2018 when I first time went for Vipassana.
Oh, you went to Vipassana?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, for context, it's 10 days in deep silence. Where was this?
This was, the first time was in Dehradun.
Okay. You went multiple times.
Yeah. My attempt is to go every year.
Oh my goodness. For 10 days. Is it really, you're meditating for 10 hours a day, sitting down cross-legged?
Yeah. And it's,
oh my gosh.
It was that 2018, the first time when I did it, Neeta, was the time when I realized how we end up effing our internal conditioning and well-being, because it's the way I realized it, if I was to just put it like an analogy, is that we end up accumulating things like a pile of paper, one on the other, one on the other, one on top of the other. And we don't realize that, if there was a stack of paper, a rim, would you even know that there's this paper, one of the papers in that rim is actually a burnt paper? You wouldn't know unless you start cleaning them one after the other.
Yep.
And I realized that in 2018 when I had this moment I think it was the 5th day when you start learning Vipassana, 4th to the 5th day. And I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop feeling through this emotion and all the anger that I'd accumulated, all the mistrust that I accumulated after losing my brother in 2006.
Oh, I didn't know that. How did you lose him? I'm so sorry.
It was a murder.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh.
Yeah. And that and that was just a day before my birthday in 2006.
Wow.
It was something, and it did not get cut the long story short. It did not. We did not get justice. And that ended up creating so much anger, so much mistrust, so much.
Was it somebody that you know?
It was somebody that we knew, but not within the family. It was somebody outside. And all of that, including the grief, piled up without me knowing how it is showing up in my life. Bad relationships, one after the other, so many other things, right? And it was in Vipassana that I realized that you can always forgive. You can always heal. You can always let compassion take over, because the moment of realization was that people who did all of this must have gone through so much bitterness and hell to have been able to do something as bad as this. What must have been their life condition?
You were able to get to that point to see that person's perspective.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was my moment of awakening in many ways, that, we always end up piling on things and we don't address them when they should be addressed. Which we should always, because piling them on only builds up and manifests into many other things, which end up leading to a lot of sucky moments in life.
Yeah.
So address them when they should be, rather than just letting them pile on one after the other and then figuring out at one point in time in life, okay, what am I dealing with? What is this demon that I'm dealing with? And I think that is what has helped me ensure that at work, as an entrepreneur, some of the tools you talked about, right? One thing that I always do is I have my own inner personal board of advisors.
I love that. Is your brother one of them?
I seek him, but a very dear, cherished friend who we are connected through. He's one of them. My sister's one of them. A couple of other people, like 5 or 6 people that I have in my inner personal board of advisors, who I just reach out to and I say that, I'm having a bad moment. I need my 30 seconds of ranting.
Yes. Yes. And we were doing some of those like yesterday,
Yeah.
at a rage practice. And I want to go back into this idea of forgiveness. Because I think so many people, after hearing this mic drop moment that you just shared about losing your brother in just the most awful way possible. And I've lost a brother as well, and so we share that. I think sudden death is obviously one of the most, it's like one of the most horrific things, especially when they're young too.
Yeah.
I mean, young, older, but when they're young, it's a very different, like there's no comprehension many times. And I think that, it's hard to even comprehend forgiving yourself. Like, what if you did this, or what if you did that, or what if I was just there, or what if, so I can only imagine everything you kind of went through to kind of alchemize that amount of grief. And I've never been to Vipassana. I feel like I've done all of the things except for Vipassana. It is on my bucket list at some point in my life. And do you think it is possible to forgive people of even the most heinous, atrocious crimes?
Yeah. Yes, it is. But why is it important is the question, right? Because you can always stay with it. It helps you. It protects you. You know, the fact that when you don't forgive, you're in a space where, you've been the victim. You talk about it in your book, right? You continue to live in that space that you've been a victim of this, and that, whatever's happened. And
it's your story.
It's your story, right?
You're addicted to it. It gives you life. It gives you power.
It just tells you that you've been wronged. And that it should not have happened. Yes, it should not have happened. But now that it has happened, if I continue to, and if it was like the way I was living, people who did the heinous crime, if I talk about this story of mine, they had done this and they'd moved on. That was the fact. We didn't get justice. That was the fact. But the story and the emotion behind it made that I lived with from 2006 until 2018, 12 years, made me bitter.
Yeah.
Made me not trust people. Made me go through relationship issues one after the other. Made me live with a lot of anger. None of these things that I was dealing with had any impact whatsoever on the people who had done the crime and moved on. So who was getting impacted? Who was living and dealing with the trauma? And actually, I multiplied the trauma, right? By not forgiving, I multiplied the trauma because there was one trauma, which was losing my brother. And then there was the traumas that were adding one after the other, leading to me breaking down.
Wow. Yeah.
So for not forgiving is not in your favor.
Yeah.
If there is a trauma, it will take time. It will not be easy to forgive. It is not easy. It's never easy. It's not like, okay, you know what? I forgive. Right. I'm done. It's not that.
It's like a muscle.
It is.
It's like a muscle. It's kind of like, okay, today I'm angry, tomorrow I'm angry, and which is why you had 10 days of Vipassana and 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day of the, sitting with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when you're in a Vipassana, I think that's why so many people are like, wait, what? How can you sit in this thing and not do anything? Because you're so confronted and you're faced with all of the biggest demons. And I think now even I talk a lot about psychedelics and the use of mushrooms for PTSD and, all of the other things from ayahuasca to ketamine. We have a lot of research going on, MDMA, that's helping people process trauma. But at the root of it is to be able to sit with the discomfort. And you can do that naturally without all of these drugs. If you can clear out 10 days to sit with the discomfort. And yogis and sants, they've been doing this for thousands of years, and we're only now trying to get access to it. And some of us want it faster, and so fine, we do these things and maybe they help us. But I think that is the biggest thing, is to actually face it head on, and what you've been able to do so beautifully. So how many times have you done Vipassana?
I've done it 3 times thus far. The first was in 2018. The next was in 2019. 2020, 21 did not happen because of COVID. 22, I wanted to, I'd booked, but then life happens, could not happen. I did it again this year in April, soon after just closing on the financial year in March 2023. I was like, you know what? I need a break. I just need to go. I just need to go, or else I'll just psych out on my team.
So what advice do you have for somebody that's like holding on to something? Somebody wronged them, and maybe there was a betrayal, a failure, a hurt, a wrong, and they're still carrying it. What advice would you, and maybe they don't have the space or the heart yet to go to Vipassana, what is the one thing that they could do today?
I'm no expert, and it isn't that.
You should be, though, because you've been through an enormous trauma.
Yeah, there's still things that happen in my life, right? Where I feel betrayed, where I feel that I've been wronged. Am I able to immediately work on it and say that, okay, I've forgiven, despite practicing Vipassana? One thing that I do for sure is be honest with myself about what am I feeling. Even if I'm not at that point in time in the capacity to address it to the person who I feel betrayed or hurt from, I at least am honest with myself. And that honesty for me, I may not have the courage, if to put it in the right word, I may not have the courage to address it directly with that person at that point in time, because I might just feel that, okay, they may feel hurt or whatever. I might just be giving another story to myself at that point in time. But I don't lie to myself. And I at least put it out into a journal. I journal every day. There are days that I miss it, but then I'm very quick to go back and I put it all down.
And it's such a connection practice back to yourself, too.
I put it back there that this is what happened and this is what I'm feeling about. Like everything. It's like a vomit.
Yeah, it's a word vomit.
Yeah, it is. And
do you do one of those where you set a timer and then, write as much as you can, or is it just like in flow typically?
It's just in flow, and it's usually before bedtime. And it just relieves me. Yeah. It makes me feel that, I've been honest about what I felt. And it heals a part of me. I'm not carrying it with me anymore in a way that still continues to hurt. But there's always something in the back of the mind that, I want to address it directly. I want to have the courage to be able to directly address it to the person. And I work towards it one day at a time. Sometimes it happens sooner. Some days it takes time. But yeah, always working towards it.
And I just think that it's the biggest advice that we can give each other. And I want to shift gears because I know we're running out of time. Before we get into our igniting round, where can everybody learn more about the storytelling process, the art of content, and just, I feel like they've fallen in love with your story and they want to know more. So where can we listen to CXO Talks?
CXO Talks actually is a series that I'm very passionate about, Neeta.
I'm loving it. We'll link our episode in the show notes as well that we did because it was so much fun.
I know. And, the reason that I'm very passionate about it, especially from a geographic perspective, when we think CXOs, when we think, in fact, there was this very interesting campaign on billboards that happened, I think, in US, where it said, when you think doctor, when you think about a doctor, what is the gender you think about? Men. When you think about a nurse, women. When you think pilot, men. When you think about the stewards, women. Why? And that is much more predominant in South Asia, India specifically, talking about the C-suite, the chief executives. There's so many women who are slaying it. Yeah. Like you, like so many other women, especially in India, who are slaying it, who are building ventures, who are doing it like nobody else's business.
No, it's amazing. I think you just had somebody on that was like paving the way for women in politics. Yes. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's phenomenal. So I'm going to share those 2 episodes in our show notes. But this is you're normalizing the what's not norm here. Yeah. And so is it just CXO Talks?
Yes, for now it's just CXO Talks, where I get women who are leading and shaping businesses in various aspects of life, whether it is as a nonprofit, whether it is corporates, whether it is startups, and just getting them and featuring their journeys and their learnings and their fuck up moments.
I know. We need to normalize the fuck up moments because that's it. Well, and before we end, what does it mean to be brave in this season and stage of life?
To be honest with yourself, to have the courage to sit with yourself and face the demons within and say that, yeah, this happened, but and this makes me feel, instead of shadowing it and making it cosmetic and making it look good, making it look aesthetic. Life is not Instagram reels.
Right. Shouldn't be.
And we all have our sucky moments, but just sit with them and accept, be in acceptance and have the grace to say that, you know what, this happened, that sucked. Now what? Just have the grace to accept that sucked and accept that made you feel blah, made you feel murky, made you feel, those scars that we have. Just see them for what they are. They're ugly, but it is you. It is a part of you. That scar is a part of you. So just accept it and allow it to heal by seeing that this is what it is.
And one word that describes the season of life for you?
Spring. Always. Not always, but yeah, spring for sure right now. I think
it's blooming.
It's blooming. I feel that all the courage that I've been able to accumulate, all the sucky parts that I've been able to address and accept for what they are, has made me always feel very joyous about life. And knowing that nothing is permanent, I think that's one of the central premise of the Vipassana practice as well.
1000%. I feel like people listening to this conversation is taking away, two things. How can somebody with such an aura like yours, if you're watching this on YouTube, to just be so magnetic and so bright, have gone through some really dark moments that, have taken your breath away, and the loss, the anger, the rage, and you've been able to alchemize it in such a beautiful way of telling stories and female stories and uplifting others in India, where this is a time for women rising. So I just want to honor you, and I'm so excited that we were able to do this, and I'm just so committed to supporting this next venture of yours. And until next time on the Brave Table.